Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the new generation took over the WWF. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
It looks bad. It looks real bad. It's abscessed.
Joe Gimateo.
What kind of a dentist has decayed teeth?
Such an appropriate question. I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be taking a look at the Raw that aired on July 17th, 1995. This Raw was recorded at the Danville High School in Danville, Pennsylvania, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I am ready.
Goodbye, Danville.
Yes, goodbye, Danville. This will be our last episode in good old Danville, PA. Danville, we hardly knew ye. Let's get into it. For our intro tonight, we've got more promos in profile. This time it's IRS and Shawn Michaels getting us ready for their match later. It should be noted that his general demeanor indicates that Shawn Michaels does not give a shit about what he's doing, and that IRS was already sweating profusely during this. The effort of speaking. It's almost like he's Yokozuna sometimes. Welcome, everybody! Tonight, we're going to have Shawn Michaels versus IRS, in case you didn't catch that earlier. There's apparently a Kiss My Foot chant going on that's barely audible in the background here during the intro. I wonder how many atom bomb footballs they had to give out to get the kids to chant that. We can't dwell on that, though, because we're going to go straight into our first match. Owen Hart and Yokozuna with Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji defeats Jim Dimitri and Gus Kantarakis by pinfall in 2 minutes and 54 seconds. I loved the way that the match started with Jim Cornette yelling, "That sounds like a law firm! Who are these two jokes?" Dimitri and Kantarakis are wearing matching singlets in Greek colors. I loved how Vince couldn't resist bringing up the hip toss competition aboard the USS Intrepid, something that happened 2 years ago. At this point, why the fuck are we still talking about something that happened 2 years ago? I also loved how, when we get to the finish, Owen gets tagged in, but Yoko doesn't bother to even try to climb through the ropes. He just stands there in the corner, leaning on the ring post, waiting for the run-in from Kantarakis when Owen applies the sharpshooter to Dimitri. That way, we don't have to get embarrassed about Yoko's inability to climb through the ropes quickly. I hate to say it, but this match just came across as extremely lazy to me, and Owen, as good as he always is, wasn't enough for this one. Ryan, what did you think about our opener here?
It was nothing fantastic. I believe this is the first time we saw Jim Dimitri in a match. We saw Gus Kantarakis one other time, if you guys remember, where he was really bad against Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels made him.
He was the one
It's a miracle he survived.
almost got his head kicked off, right?
Yes, it's the guy they asked for one more time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it starts out, Dimitri's in the ring. We don't really see too much. I mean, it's just kind of a little bit of back and forth, and then they tag in Yoko, and then Gus gets tagged in, but nothing really gets done in this match, except for the end. I thought the tag team finisher between Owen and Yoko is actually kind of cool. It looked fine, you know, with Owen held the guy down in like a ankle lock type thing, and then Yoko bounces off the ropes and then does the leg drop. So I don't hate their finisher, I guess, but yeah, this match didn't do anything for me. It was a couple of low-level jobbers, which is, saying something when you're talking about jobbers here, against one good wrestler and one overweight slow wrestler. So nothing fantastic.
640 pounds of overweight wrestler.
641.
Just keeps going up. Yeah, I agree. It was lazy. Good word, Bartlett. It's supposed to be a match to get you excited to see these guys in a pay-per-view match in a week. And it was just, it was lazy. I agree. The jobbers were bad. These two were bad in my opinion.
We already knew Gus.
Yeah, Gus is lucky to be alive, so I'll give him a little bit of a pass. But
well, that was just earlier this night, right? Because that was Danville as well.
Yeah. It's Danville crowd.
That was the morning.
I don't know. Yeah. We don't know the recording order, so that Shawn Michaels match might have come after this. They were like, "Man, you really sucked in that Yoko match. We're gonna put you up against Michaels and kill you."
Yeah, he probably got the shit kicked out of him at a Waffle House after the show. They kind of reminded me of like bad women's wrestlers that you see today, just telegraphing everything very poorly, like kind of just setting up all of the moves, but. Yeah, it's just kind of disappointing. Again, Bartlett, great word, lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And you know what, Joe, you bring up a great point there that I didn't even think about. These are our tag team champs.
Yeah.
This is what we're going into this pay-per-view with. This is the go-home show. You're right. This is supposed to get us going and get us interested, and this did fuck all to get me interested in the tag team champs. But then again, the tag team scene in general just is kind of disinteresting, I guess, but yeah, good points. Ryan, I can see how you wouldn't hate this, how a person could not hate this.
What? I said the finisher was okay.
Yeah,
that was about it.
I know, you're gushing though.
The rest of the match was pretty forgettable. Yeah.
I saw a little squirt.
Oh God, we're going to go down a pathway of imagery here. Just a little skid mark. Speaking of a little skid mark, here's Todd Pettingzoo.
Speaking of skid marks.
Todd Pettingzoo. This is the final In Your House report. And the pay-per-view is coming up, and Todd is wearing a button-down shirt over a button-down shirt. How about that?
You mean the Toddster?
Oh, boy.
Todd reminds us about that unfortunate match for the tag titles, that being the Allied Powers versus Owen and Yoko at In Your House 2. Hold on to your butts, everybody, because tonight Diesel is going to introduce his Lumberjacks. And Todd lets us know that this is the first ever Lumberjack match on a pay-per-view. That just doesn't seem correct to me. Can either of you guys refute that, maybe? I didn't look this up, so I don't know, but...
I'll take his word for it. I don't know.
Jeez, that just sounds... I don't know. Okay. Todd also lets us know that there's going to be a great big concert at In Your House. Double J singing and a light show and backup singers and the whole 9 yards. This is basically going to be the Super Bowl halftime show by the sounds of things. But will that just be a distraction for Double J, since he will be defending his Intercontinental title against Shawn Michaels? The 1-2-3 Kid versus the Roadie is going to happen, but how is the Roadie going to fare in that match when he's also going to be busy making Double J's concert happen, rigging the lights, selling the t-shirts, etc., etc.? Savio Vega and Razor Ramon are going to meet Men on a Mission in a plain old tag match, and Bam Bam Bigelow will be taking on Henry Godwin. This was a pretty straightforward In Your House report. Thankfully, it was relatively brief and to the point. Ryan, do you have any thoughts on the final In Your House report, or thoughts going into the In Your House pay-per-view now that we've had the match card laid out for us?
I mean, we don't learn anything too new here. Todd's already filled us in on most of the matches that we were going to see here already. We mentioned those handful of matches that don't look terrible, but kind of looking forward to the live debut of Double J. That could be exciting. The one thing I do have to point out, though, is it's a real shame that we've got two people that we're really up on, Savio Vega and Razor Ramon. They're in a tag team against King Mabel and Mo. So you have two people that would be very easy to get excited about a match that they're involved in, but then you put them up against two people in the company that assure this is going to be a shitty match. So that's a real shame.
Yeah, for me, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just start thinking of random shit because I'm usually not paying attention to what the Toddster is saying. I thought of a good, with Bam Bam, I hate this burial of Bam Bam. And I think a good story for him would have been maybe to have him go through and beat all the members of the $1 Million Corporation, kind of work his way up to face off with Diesel at the end, rather than this whole friendship bullshit, I just did some fantasy booking in my mind. Other than that, I don't give a shit about this pay-per-view beyond the Shawn Michaels and Double J match.
Yeah, and you know what? That's pretty good booking, man. I would be down for that. That would fit the image of Bam Bam Bigelow that I've always held in my head as what would be best for him in this time. Coming after, I'm everybody in the corporation, I'm coming after you, and then Diesel, you're mine, or some shit like that. I can just hear the promos. That's awesome. Ryan, to your point about Savio Vega and Razor Ramon, absolutely correct. And is it just me, or is there zero heat on this? Savio Vega and Razor Ramon. They keep on putting it over as this travesty that happened, the injury of Razor Ramon at the hands of Mabel and Sir Mo, and just, I don't give a shit, and it doesn't really seem like many other people give a shit here for this. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
No. I mean, it's something that happened, 2 months ago, and
yeah.
I mean, I guess it's good to see Razor back, but it's kind of a waste with this.
Yeah, good call on that. Well, when we come back from commercial, we will go straight into our next match. Jean-Pierre Lafitte defeats David Thornburg by pinfall in 2 minutes and 32 seconds. I had to note, Lafitte looked great. In shape and working in the ring for the most part. There were maybe 1 or 2 hiccups here and there. Side note, apparently Jean-Pierre Lafitte has been stealing people's shit in the locker room. That's a symptom of piracy, apparently. I can't help but think that those velvet pants that Lafitte wears must be really, really fucking hot to wear in the ring. In this match, the work has been all Lafitte here so far, as up to the point of this note, and as the action leads to the outside of the ring, Lafitte leaps from the top turnbuckle to hit Thornburg with a flying punch. It looked stiff as hell, and I don't know if Thornburg even knew it was coming or not. It sure as hell didn't look like Thornburg was expecting it. Get to the end of the match, keep in mind 2.5 minutes long. The cannonball finisher looked good. The setup was a little much with the gesturing and everything going on, but god damn, I wish I could get past the gimmick, because Jean-Pierre didn't look too bad here. Before we move along to anything else here, Joe, what did you think of this match?
Yeah, I agree with you. The gimmick is really taking him down, because pretty impressive. All those splashes to the outside that he gives us just about every match that he's in. It's kind of like he's getting the Quang treatment. It's just, I feel like he can work a crowd, he can get us excited, but it's such a bad gimmick that it's hard to do. It's hard to get into it. During the match, they plugged 1-900 Shameless, and it just made me think about, it's crazy how we barely see Jim Ross on TV. He's been there for over 2 years, and we never see him. We hear about 1-900 Shameless. You can talk to him, but we never see him on TV. It's insane. So that was just a random thought I had during the match.
I agree how sad it is about his gimmick, because this was a extremely entertaining match out of him where he really pulled off some great looking moves. We start things off right when we're coming back from commercial. Vince says, "Welcome back, everyone. It's the Whitewater hearings featuring Hillary Clinton. No, it's Monday Night Raw." That gives us a little hint as to where we're at in history. And Bartlett, at the beginning of this match, Lawler brought up the feat involved with Jean-Pierre Lafitte's last name.
Of course.
He had to throw that in one last time. But after this match started, I know, Joe, you completely forgot last week that Jean-Pierre was even still around. But here he is putting on a fairly decent match. And outside of this stupid pirate gimmick, like we've stated many times before, Jean-Pierre looks good in the ring, and Thornburg, It's tough to really say if he was good or bad because he just spent the whole time getting thrown around. But old Thorny looked pretty decent. At least he took a beating well. I'll give him that. When the Pirate did that flying punch off the top rope onto the outskirt, it was a really great looking hit. Like you said, it almost looked realistic how hard he hit him. So I thought that was a fantastic move out of Jean-Pierre. I also laughed. You brought up the 1-900 Shameless with JR, and this week's topic is JR is going to speculate who he thinks is going to take over for President Jack Tunney. Wonder who. And I think this is the first time we cleanly got to actually see the cannonball finish, and it's a pretty impressive looking finisher for Jean-Pierre. So yeah, it really is tough to not just bring up, man, this guy could have did something if we just didn't cripple him with this gimmick, because it's a bad gimmick. And after this match, he's still undefeated, I guess.
Yeah, great point there. I keep forgetting about the whole undefeated thing. I'm not sure how much it's really going to come into play as far as stories go, because it doesn't seem like they're doing much to fit a pirate into a story. The only thing I can think of is that bullshit that happened with the Repo Man and the Macho Man's hat back in 1993, you know?
Yeah.
What else is a pirate going to do other than steal shit? Unless they're already kind of alluding to that with this whole locker room thievery thing going on. Maybe that'll be the next person to take the Undertaker's urn. What do you think?
Well, times are tough in the company, you know? Leads people to start stealing shit.
Doubloons.
So, okay, I have an honest question here. Gimmick aside, let's just forget the whole gimmick angle of this. Where the fuck was this guy whenever the Quebecers were a tag team?
Yeah, it seemed like he took a back seat to Jacques.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a crime, because if we had this kind of action out of him, the tag team scene might not have been as bad as it was. I just have such a hard time reconciling the fact that this is the same guy that sucked in the Quebecers, but is working this fucking well in solo matches.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same with Bam Bam Bigelow. Rather than have this babyface thing going on, if we could have done with Jean-Pierre just a generic badass type thing, which with him it works even better because he's got the eye patch, a legit eye patch for a missing eye, no less. But that's all right. Maybe this is the traumatic bullshit that happened to him that eventually caused him to come up with the PCO gimmick for Ring of Honor. Well, guys, I have a surprise for you. Are you ready? Guess what? Fatu speaks English now, and he's no longer a mindless savage. This is the vignette debut of Make a Difference Fatu. And man, this is so freaking 90s here. We've done a complete 180 on Fatu here. He is no longer anything like he was before. So, for example, instead of pigging out on raw meat with Bastion Booger, Fatu is now driving convertibles and lamenting the socioeconomic circumstances of his upbringing, and attempting to enact change for the good of the community and his own catharsis.
I'm confused. I thought he grew up in the jungles on an island.
You know, with a brother named Samu and then apparently some cousin named Sione. But yeah, you would think that. Where's Afa and Sika in this? Or just Afa, I guess. He was the only manager. And Lou Albano. Like, are we just completely forgetting that those guys existed? Anyway, for the record, guys, there ain't no hope with dope.
And you better ask somebody.
Joe, I want to know what you think about the new and improved Fatu.
Well, there's two ways of looking at this. I think that, if we look at it that he was a head shrinker before this, it's pretty funny and strange. But if you look at this, if you are seeing Fatu for the first time without knowing that he was a head shrinker, I kind of like this. It's, like you said, it's very 90s. It kind of reminded me of like a John Singleton film from the 90s, like Higher Learning or like Boys in the Hood, like one of those movies. Like that's kind of like what the vignette sort of reminded me of, just the look. So, these types of babyface characters never last very long, but it's okay. I'm excited to see him as a singles wrestler. I'll say that.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible, like you said, Joe. I mean, there were things about it that felt very 90s and didn't really connect with me as an adult because this was a very kid-oriented character. with him trying to basically tell kids to stay in school and stay off dope. So, I mean, it was kind of corny, but I think the message was appropriate for its time and place.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And as kind of annoyed with this as I am, I get that aspect of it. You're right. This is perfect for its time and place. And Joe, to your point, if looked at in isolation, it is decent. There's nothing really wrong with it. But where I have the problem is that, 2 weeks ago, we saw the Savage head shrinkers going on here. It was still, we had Fatu dancing and doing the ass shaking and all that was kind of leading to this, but it was still in Danville. That's for damn sure. If they had taken Fatu off the roster for, a couple months, maybe let us slowly forget about him, then bring him back. Yeah. Okay, that would have been much better. But we saw the other head shrinker Fatu not even 2 weeks ago in Danville. So I can't get behind it. Hopefully I'll forget about all of it altogether. Back at ringside, some kid is giving the King bunny ears, while the King and Vince tee up another viewing of Double J Jeff Jarrett's music video. We've talked about that at length already. We don't need to touch on that, but stay tuned because we're heading now into our next match. Shawn Michaels defeats IRS with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, by pinfall in 8 minutes and 33 seconds. This match was somewhat confusing for me at the start. There were so many false starts and fake outs back and forth. It just felt like there was a lot of time being killed between the two competitors to really get this going and work up to their pace. Things do pick up, though. Shawn Michaels is great at being a cocky shit, and the work that he ends up doing with IRS's tie was good stuff. It always struck me as odd that nobody ever used IRS's tie as a weapon, but here we go. I like to joke around, but IRS is just really, really sweating. It made me wonder if he's on salt pills or something. I'm not joking. Within the first 3 minutes of this match, he is just soaked in his own juices completely.
Yeah.
And then here comes the abdominal stretch. That old chestnut, the same gimmick, the same utilization of this move, grabbing onto the rope for extra leverage and back and forth with the referee. It's amazing. I wonder if we went back and timed this, if this lasts the same amount of time in every single one of his matches that he does it in.
It's like a drummer keeping time.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the referee is up there whispering in his ear, hold on to it for another 5 seconds.
And a 1, and a 2.
It's stated by the King that they sit in a headlock for 2 minutes. He comes right out and says that they're just sitting in it. It doesn't surprise me, though. It felt like they were trying to time the headlock for the commercial break, but they went a little early on it, so the headlock was applied. And then after sitting in it for a while, they broke out of it, but then they got the signal that we haven't had commercial break yet, so then they went back into the headlock, and then the break happened. I absolutely loved IRS selling the boot to the face reversal when IRS attempted to come down on Michaels from the top rope, the way that he just kind of flopped in the ring after like he was having a mini seizure. It was pretty funny. Finally, Shawn lands a good-looking super kick and gets a lightning fast 3 count for the victory. Once again, the ladies of Danville love the Heartbreak Kid. Shawn even gives some smooches to some young ladies on his way out of the ring area. It was fairly innocent, but it was kind of surprising. Ryan, what did you think about this match?
From the very beginning, Vince, he starts it off. He just can't stop talking about Shawn Michaels' striptease from a few weeks ago. He's just so excited. After that, Shawn Michaels starts the match off in control, and IRS is doing a good job of selling for Shawn Michaels, and Michaels is pretty entertaining, as he always is. Then IRS is going to, start to get into the old way of things. He rolls out of the ring. He comes back in. He gets in an arm bar. But luckily, he didn't stay in the arm bar too long, like he will in the abdominal stretch later on. But it transitions back to Michaels taking over control. And, at this point, I'm noticing these guys aren't working bad together. IRS isn't a very exciting wrestler, but I thought the way that he was interacting with Shawn Michaels, just kind of like what we've said many times before, Shawn Michaels has a way to make pretty much any match at least somewhat entertaining. That kind of played out through this as well. And Bartlett, you brought up how much you noticed IRS was sweating. And I think I have a bit of a theory as to why it was so glaring in this match.
Salt pills?
No. It's that most of the time, IRS comes out in a white shirt, but tonight he came out in like a powder blue shirt, and it just magnified the look of how sweaty he was because you could just see, from head to toe, he was just soaked. On a white shirt, it's a little harder to see, so I think that's why we usually can't see just how soaked he typically is. Outside of that, we go back to his classics. He does the arm bar, but I enjoyed the little quick back and forths right at the end before Shawn Michaels successfully lands the sweet chin music. So I thought this is a good use of a mid-carder like IRS. I don't like seeing IRS when he's wrestling up against jobbers because he's kind of boring, left to his own right. If he is the star beating up on someone, it's not going to be a very exciting match. But when you put him up against someone like Shawn Michaels, he's not a terrible wrestler, so it could actually make a decently entertaining match, and I didn't hate this one at all.
Yeah, Vince gives us a little bit of a pop culture info telling us that IRS is Steffi Graf's favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
Apparently she was accused of tax evasion around this time. Did you guys see that, Ryan, you kind of talked about Vince gushing over a previous striptease, but did you guys see the guy with his arms folded and he was wearing a Pepsi shirt? And he was just not selling an ounce of excitement for Shawn's entrance.
No.
Like the guy, everybody's like, cheering and yelling. And this guy's just standing there with his arms crossed, like just hating every second of it. It was hilarious. They had the camera on him for a while there. I thought that this match, I think that it was pretty long for an IRS match. I think that if I got what I wanted, it would have been like kind of in between a squash and the length of this match. How long was it, Bartlett?
This match was 8 minutes and 33 seconds.
If I got what I wanted, it would have been like half of that. But IRS is a guy who's done a lot for the business, so he doesn't deserve to be squashed. And I'm shocked that we saw an abdominal stretch. I couldn't believe it. My jaw hit the floor. I like Jerry Lawler saying, if he hits Double J with that kick, he's going to be sipping through a straw. That was good. Kissing the girls, I don't know. It was kind of weird. I thought it was a little overboard.
A little creepy.
Yeah. And he did it like 3 times, I think. So it was a little strange. But it's getting a guy over before a pay-per-view, unlike the tag match we saw earlier.
Yeah, agreed. This match, I'm having trouble with the words to describe it because it wasn't terrible by any means at all. It was very serviceable, but it was maybe a notch better than serviceable. Shawn Michaels did great. IRS did perfectly fine, too. I would have to say that the only potential negative here was maybe the smooching of the girls afterwards. But again, it seemed innocent enough. He was just kind of forcefully smooching them on his way out. That's the creepy part, is he just walked up and did it. Didn't really seem like he was shoving his tongue down anybody's throats, but I don't know. The camera wasn't that close. The first girl seemed to like it. The second girl was very perturbed, we'll say. But you know what? The fact that she was perturbed might have been because she was with Barry fucking Dudensky. Let's check in with Barry. Barry doesn't have anything too exciting here. He's got heart-shaped glasses for $21. Seemed a bit overpriced to me for $19.95. Pair of gimmick glasses. We do get a video package afterwards teasing Hakushi versus Bret Hart next week on Raw. Hopefully that's a normal match with no shenanigans, so we can get a good view of the chemistry between the two. Once it was announced, I got a little excited. This makes me wonder, though, and I'm throwing this out there to both of you guys, so with his dad being a promoter and running a territory before moving over to the WWF, it seems really unlikely, but Do either of you guys know if Bret Hart did any time in Japan whenever he was coming up in the business, or was he just Stampede in WWF and that's it?
Yeah, I have no clue.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I know that Bret was very well liked internationally during this time, but I don't know about his Japan career, if there was any, or what it was like.
I just remember, I think it's, and Joe, I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it was Scott Hall or Razor Ramon in this case, that was a big fan of going over to Japan for the paychecks.
Yep.
And, Japan is its own style, its own way of doing things, and you have to get over that communication barrier when you're over there. So I just didn't know if Bret Hart did time in Japan, if that would help him have a better match with Hakushi here or not. So
word has it that's what forced the Steiners out, is they wanted to be able to go over to Japan and collect a few extra paychecks, and Vince McMahon said no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hogan had a lot of matches in Japan too.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he was with WWF.
Yeah, it seemed like the whole Japan thing was kind of a sticking point for a lot of people at this time. I mean, we can get into that later on when it actually happens, but yeah, it's just, like I said, it came up as a question in my mind whenever I heard that announcement, because I don't think I've ever heard talk of Bret Hart wrestling anywhere other than Stampede in the WWF. And that's not to say that it didn't happen, I've just never heard of it. Well, now we're going to visit Isaac Yankem, DDS. It looks bad. It looks abscessed.
That poor child with the perfect bowl cut.
Ryan, you did it so much better than I could earlier there. This time there's a kid in the chair getting an extraction, and I popped my ass off when Isaac Yankem climbs up onto the kid in the chair to get some extra leverage to rip that tooth out. I thought that was good shit, pal. The tooth does get pulled, but it's blurred out. I wonder, was it maybe the network blurring it out, or did it originally aired blurred out?
I wonder that, and I almost wonder if they blurred it out so they didn't have to make a realistic looking tooth and blood.
Ah, okay.
Save some money.
Yeah. They didn't want you to see all the blood dripping from the...
And it's a good way to insinuate that it's gory. I kind of liked it. I thought it was a good little gimmick they pulled there.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just flesh that out here? Ryan, what did you think about the upcoming Bret Hart Hakushi match? But also, what did you think about this week's visit to the dentist?
Just like you, I'm excited about the Hakushi Bret Hart match next week. We got a teaser at the last In Your House, and it was pretty entertaining, although it maybe didn't end the best. So, like you said, if we can get a nice clean match, it has the potential to be a really, really great match. The Isaac Yankem vignette, it was just absolutely fantastic. The way he started out, that's why I picked it as my opening line, because I absolutely loved it. It's abscess. And then how he just climbs up on the kid with those pliers and just rips the tooth out with no Novocaine, no sleeping gas, nothing. Just absolutely loved every moment of it.
Yeah, going back to Barry fucking Dudinsky, I like those heart-shaped glasses. I think that shit's pretty cool. Good
but
merch.
I wonder, adjusted for inflation, what is that?
Yeah.
Like $45 or something?
Well, I mean, look, the times are tough in the company right now. You got to rip off all these kids.
Yeah. That price tag's a little steep, man. Come on.
Oh, I'd pay. I'd pay for it. No doubt.
You whore.
Bret Hart, Hakushi, I think that's one that we're going to want to circle on the calendar. I think it's, from my research that I did earlier when we started 1995, I feel like that might be one of the ones to circle. So we'll see.
Joe playing a little reverse Dr. Death tonight.
That's right.
Wow.
Now, I could be way off. I don't know if they had more matches or not. But
this is the match where Bret Hart breaks his fucking forearm and we don't see him again for 6 months.
Yeah, or maybe he gets his head removed, like Hakushi hinted at a few weeks ago.
We find out there's going to be a rematch to the foot match.
Yeah. And getting on to Isaac Yankem, I do like Vince like overselling the dentist gimmick. Like it's everything he says is just funny with, the banter with Lawler. But, the kid, I feel bad for the kid, really. But then I remembered that he got to see some nudity in that National Geographic right before. So
yeah,
he's fine.
Yeah.
They're going to take everybody back to Danville and bring Shawn Michaels in for one more time and kick Bret Hart's head off. Put it in a burlap sack. Drag it out of the building. Yeah, this was all good stuff. Ordinarily, I'm pretty harsh on the stupid gimmicks, but this one, they're playing it up so well. This one's
at least like, it's funny. I mean, you can look back on this and think that it's funny, where like the pirate stuff and, all the other stuff's just like, oh man, I can't believe they kept going with it.
Well, all the other stuff, and, the Jean-Pierre Lafitte is a great example of it. Henry O. Godwin to a lesser extent, but it doesn't have any connection to what's going on in reality. Well, in wrestling reality, we'll say, in kayfabe. So in this case, with Isaac Yankem, Jerry Lawler had the whole foot match thing, and he had the foot shoved in his mouth, and okay, he had some kind of mouth damage, so now he needs to see a dentist, and we get this guy. As opposed to just all of a sudden the descendant of a Louisiana pirate showing up 200 years later to exact revenge for no goddamn reason. Or a hog farmer just showing up. Or, and I hate to say it, a Connecticut blue blood deciding to just wrestle. I'm definitely not bitching about Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I'm on the record as popping my ass off for it and gushing every fucking time. But if we're keeping track of gimmicks here, Dr. Isaac Yankem has been the only one to have some kind of rational lead up to his existence.
Except for those decayed teeth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just irony. That's a literary device right there, and it's genius. We're going to come out of the dentist's office and straight into our last match of the night. Kama, with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, defeats Billy Mack in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And Billy Mack is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Jason. Billy Mack is this week's jobber. It's going to be a relatively short one again this week. Not a ton of information about Billy Mack, but I thought his work in the ring deserved it tonight. That's why he's this week's jobber. Not sure of Billy Mack's real name or birth date, but he was born in Braden, Florida, and has wrestled under the names The Wrestling Cowboy and Billy Mack. He made his debut on July 29th, 1983, wrestling for a local indie promotion at a event in Plant City, Florida, where Mack would defeat The Undertaker. However, this is not The Undertaker. Mark Calloway didn't even begin training until 3 years after this match in 86, so in 1985, Mack would have one match with the WWF, losing to the Magnificent Maruko in just under 2 minutes. Billy then spent the rest of the 80s and early 90s bouncing between his home territory of Florida, wrestling for the International Championship Wrestling Alliance based out of Tampa, Florida, and Japan's Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling promotion, even winning the ICWA tag team belts twice during his time there. Then this Raw that we're covering today started a 4-match stint for Mack and the WWF. This would be his only Raw appearance, and his last match will be on January 23rd, 1996, losing with partner J.S. Storm in a handicap match to Yokozuna in 1 minute and 30 seconds on WWF Superstars. That pretty much marks the end of Billy Mack's wrestling career. He did have one more match in 98 for a indie promotion in his hometown area of Tampa, Florida, but that's it. Billy Mack's record was 20 wins, 12 losses, and 2 draws, making Billy one of the few jobbers to end his career with a winning record.
He's right up there with Jeff Hardy.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, that kind of begs the question. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is he really a jobber with a winning record? He is for our purposes here, of course, but
Yeah, because at the WWF, he was a jobber, but it seemed like at the ICWA, he was an actual big name because he pretty much did nothing but win there.
Huh. Wonder where we can get a hold of some of that videotape.
Good luck.
I'm more interested in the fact that there was another promotion using the name The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah. As soon as I saw that, that's what I had to do some digging. I was like, that can't be Calloway, especially because he wasn't even using the Undertaker name when he was wrestling early in his career. So, but yeah, someone else was using the Undertaker name way back then.
So they're allowed to steal the name The Undertaker, but Matt Bourne can't use the Doink Tank at the Lawrence County Fair.
I'm guessing the local Tampa, Florida promotion didn't copyright the name.
Yeah.
We all know that the McMahons listened to Wrasslin Raw, so there's
absolutely
be a shit ton of lawsuits getting handed out after this. Now that the secret of Tampa has been broken.
Billy Mack, God damn it.
It's the damnedest thing. I always thought that Billy Mack was a detective down in Texas. Anyway, back in the match. Kama looks good here. The tie-ups and takedowns are smooth and crisp. And, full credit to Billy Mack on that one, too. We get to a point in the match where Billy Mack starts a comeback, but that ends with a roundhouse kick from Kama that looked fucking devastating. I don't know if it was the camera angle or what, because this was in the direction of the hard camera, so it was kind of awkward to view, but whatever the reason was, it looked great. It was a great-looking kick. And 2 minutes and 2 seconds, remember, this ends up being a short match, and it's over very easily with a simple punch. I'm not sure what happened there, but it was one hit down in the 3 count. Those Undertaker fans are back in the audience again. Kama makes sure to go verbally abuse them on his way out. The only reaction that Kama gets out of them is an involuntary eyelid flutter from Sprocket's guy. Joseph, please, what did you think of this match?
I thought that Billy Mack was he was one of those jobbers that was kind of floppy. He was kind of flopping around for Kama, which to me it works with Kama when you're trying to sell Kama as this supreme fighting machine or whatever they're calling him. In this match, to me, Kama really, he looked like a fighter to me. He looked like the gimmick more than maybe some other matches that he's had. So I don't think the match, I'm not gushing, but I thought it was pretty good, pretty solid. It's, just more build up for that Kama versus Undertaker match that we're going to get at some point.
Yeah, I thought this was another solid match out of Kama, and I enjoyed Billy Mack's work. His drop kick off the top rope looked pretty good, and he was selling for Kama pretty good. You mentioned, Bartlett, that kick out of Kama, and yeah, my lord, did it look painful. It was hard. I also liked when Kama picked up Billy and laid him across the top ropes and he started laying in the kicks into his kidneys and ribs. Those looked hard too. The ending was a little bit odd where Billy looks like he kind of counters for a second and lands a couple punches, but then Kama retaliates with a couple more punches and that's enough to finish him off. So the ending was a little bit off. In all, it was a strong jobber match. I've mentioned it before and it continues. I'm annoyed that they refuse to put Kama up against at least some mid-carders. All we see is jobbers with him. And we like what we see out of him out of the ring. So please just let's see something else out of him.
Yeah. Other than the match he had with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
At King of the Ring, it's been all jobbers.
Yeah, and it's funny because whenever I was watching this match, they did kind of that same spot where Billy Mack is draped across the top turnbuckle in the corner and Kama's punching up into him with the uppercuts and kicks. And it just stood out to me that, with Shawn Michaels doing the selling, that was a really great spot. That looked great in their match. I distinctly remember commenting on it. But in this case, Joe, like you said, Billy Mack was a little bit of a flopper, which for the most part worked, but for that specific spot did not work. It was a little underwhelming. But all in all, good match. Just short and, again, like you guys have both said, I really wish we could get more out of Kama, but it seems like whoever's doing the booking here for him just doesn't want to put him up against anybody that would come across as legitimate competition, I guess. They don't want to tarnish his look of badass. It's perfectly fine to bury Bam Bam Bigelow, but we can't have Kama going up against somebody that might actually give him a fight. Well, gentlemen, now is what we've all been waiting for. Vince can barely contain himself setting up Diesel's introduction, and Vince gushes all over the place as the gallop of Roseanne blasts. And Vince looks appropriately startled, surprised, and impressed by all of the pyro he just watched the ring crew set up. This is one of those things that it shatters my suspension of disbelief, because he was standing right there while they were setting all of this up, and yet he acts as though it's just amazing and incredible.
Whoa!
He's signing the invoices for this fucking pyro, for Christ's sakes. You wouldn't think that he would be all that impressed. Although maybe that's a good thing. Maybe he's happy that he's getting his money's worth.
He might have been just thinking about that gold-plated slammer again.
Yeah, that's true. Whoa! Honest question again here. Did they have low-level crowd noise laid over top of this?
I thought about that, but I don't think they did. It seemed like the crowd reaction was pure on this one.
Well, I mean, admittedly, it was very hard to tell. But
yeah.
But watching the crowd and listening to the audio track, it didn't quite match up. It was like a constant, like I almost wanted to call it white noise. It was this constant like crowd like in the background.
Yeah, but they were like standing up and stuff, and like they were definitely reacting to it for sure. But yeah, there might have been something else thrown in there.
Well, anyway, they were all popping their ass off, and I mean that jokingly because nobody was popping anybody's asses off, for Diesel doing his, quote, Don Pardo imitation to introduce his lumberjacks. I have a hard time believing that very many people there in the arena knew who Don Pardo was. I barely know who Don Pardo is. And for the record now, Diesel's lumberjacks are Bam Bam Bigelow, Billy and Bart Gunn, Bob Holly, the 1-2-3 Kid, Adam Bomb, Savio Vega, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, Man Mountain Rock, who came out just looking like a fat, disheveled woman, Shawn Michaels, Fatu, and Techno Team 2000, and also Razor Ramon. And just for the record here, guys, I did have to look it up because they are not all present. Despite being promised that we would get all of our lumberjacks here, we didn't at first. One half of Techno Team 2000 was late getting to the ring, and Razor Ramon is not there at all. Diesel goes around the ring and interviews two people. He interviews Bam Bam Bigelow. Well, interview is a bit of a strong word. He asks them for their response. Should Sid try to escape the ring? And while Shawn Michaels does a good job of putting over the whole fiasco that's going to happen here, the cock holster thing just gets worse when Bam Bam calls Diesel Big Daddy.
Daddy!
So disappointed in my child, Bam Bam. Son, I am disappointed. There's a twist, though, when Vince calls Psycho Sid out, and of course Sid's lumberjacks come out too. And we get a ham-fisted teaser for In Your House 2. All of the lumberjacks around the ring, Sid and Diesel in the ring. Overall, this is anticlimactic as Sid and his lumberjacks just pack up and leave, of course. And that's where we fade to black. Joe, what did you think about Diesel's lumberjacks and the way that Raw ended tonight?
Well, I guess I have good things and bad things to say about it. You joked about Vince's reaction with the pyro, which was a little ridiculous, but I think Vince is just so great at in-ring introductions. You know, when he's out there and he is introducing someone coming out, he really puts everything into it, and I enjoy it all the time. Lawler was talking over the entire opening of this. I don't know if there was like a communication problem or what, but man, that was annoying. Kevin Nash he really cuts a bad babyface promo. Like, this was kind of just a reminder for me that I'm kind of tired of seeing Diesel as the champ still. You know, I think I said that at In Your House 1. I was kind of just to that point where I'm like just tired of it. And this was just a nice reminder of that. You know, him making fun of Sid is kind of like heelish behavior, similar to some promos he would cut later in WCW when he was over there. So I didn't like any of this really until Sid comes out. Sid comes out, the crowd's really into it. Vince is getting really mouthy with Sid, like telling him to come into the ring, and then he pulls the chicken shit heel thing again, which was a little disappointing. I kind of wish they would have just gone off the air with Sid and Diesel just, talking shit to each other like they were. But, at least we got a good go home ending for once for a pay-per-view. Like they did something to try to get us excited for the main event at a pay-per-view.
To start it off with the mic issues, Vince, the very first question he asked Diesel, the mic feed is kind of quiet at that point, and Jerry, the King Lawler, is just screaming over top of him, and you can't hear anything. And it's made even better with, after that's done, Lawler follows it up with, "What did he say?" You dumb fuck, shut the fuck up. But the promo that Diesel cut here at the beginning wasn't too great. It led into the Lumberjacks coming down, and we got confirmation of our question from a while back when we first saw the Techno 2000. I guess they are baby faces. We couldn't tell from their match because they looked a little heelish, but it appears they are baby faces. Once the Lumberjacks came down, and Joe, I'm glad you mentioned this, because Diesel started to become, he had glimmers of his NWO Kevin Nash character almost, and was kind of getting away from his Diesel character. So that was kind of interesting in when he was ripping on Sid. But the biggest problem is I just don't care about Diesel as a champ. And I don't care about this Lumberjack rematch with Sid, especially after seeing the match that we saw last time at the last In Your House. So it's very hard to get too excited about this match, but I do agree this was a good ending. It had everyone that's going to be involved in the ring. So if you're there for the star power, you certainly got that at the end of this Raw.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to have to disagree with you both on this one. Anticlimactic is the word for me here. And, Joe, you hit it on the head. If they had ended this with nose to nose, shouting in each other's faces, with all of the Lumberjacks pounding on the mat around the ring, I would have been satisfied with that. But the chicken shit turn around and walk out, that did not work for me, brother, for this. All it did was piss me off and make me less enthusiastic. Not that I was that enthusiastic before, but even less enthusiastic for this Diesel Psycho Sid match at In Your House too. And both of you guys have said it here. It wasn't that great before. I don't predict it to be that great coming up. For the record, I have never seen In Your House 2, so it's going to be fresh to me. And this did nothing to, if the measuring stick is desire to make that phone call and order up the pay-per-view, this did not make me want to pick up the phone. This did not, make a difference in my purchasing decision for the pay-per-view. It was anticlimactic, a little bit of a letdown for a go-home show, but I'm kind of used to that, so I'm not bitching too hard, but again, they would not have gotten my $14.95. That being said, that's it. That is the end of Raw tonight. Let's take it over to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you go first?
Highlights. I'm going with the Isaac Yankem vignette. It was my favorite thing of the night. Just the comments that he made and how he made them were just hilarious, and I absolutely loved it. My low light is going to be the tag team match at the beginning with Yokozuna and Owen Hart. We had probably the worst jobbers of the night, and it was a very short, not exciting. It was a disservice to the tag team belts. So it grabbed the low light for me.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go off of that and start with my low light. Based on how I feel going into a pay-per-view, this being a go-home, yeah, I agree. That tag team match, I have no interest in the tag team match going into a pay-per-view for the belts. My highlight, even though I'm not particularly excited to see the match. I do like that they went home fairly strong on this Raw. The chicken shit move, yeah, I didn't like that, but at least we didn't deal with the bushwhackers or something incredibly stupid that makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, it at least set up the pay-per-view.
Yes. So that was my highlight.
I'm not looking to argue any of those points. We're really falling on different spots on this one because I just can't see it, that ending. But that being said, I have a very, very different low light. I'll do my highlight first. Ryan, I agree with you. Isaac Yankem here that was entertaining as hell. That's probably one of the most entertaining vignettes I've seen in quite a while.
I watched it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. And as much as I love the wrestling aspect of what we do here, sometimes the vignettes can be just as good, and that's one of those times. For my low light, none of these matches were overly bad, with the exception of the tag team match. You guys have already said everything there needs to be said about that, but I had a bigger problem with this episode. 46 minutes and change is what Raw generally runs at. This particular episode was 46 minutes and I think about 32 seconds, definitely 46 at least, and added up, we got a grand total of 16 minutes and 1 second of wrestling out of this, meaning that we've got 30 minutes and 30 seconds of non-wrestling for this go-home show. And I wouldn't have noticed, if we didn't have that lumberjack thing going on at the very end with 30 competitors standing around the ring. And, I get that this is the go-home show. We have to keep as many people healthy as possible for the pay-per-view. But of those 30 people standing around the ring doing nothing, we could have had at least 20 of them in matches tonight. I'm not saying all of them, and I'm not saying it all would have been good, but we could have had more than 16 fucking minutes of wrestling in this episode. So that's my low light. As far as go-home shows go, this was extremely underwhelming to me.
It could have been a clip show.
Yeah.
It very well could
with
have.
Beavis and Butthead.
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right, and I would have probably bitched twice as hard about that. It's just... Do you think I'm off with that?
No.
16 minutes.
It was fairly lackluster. And to be honest, I was debating about my low light between the final match and just the lack of wrestling. That was the other one I was possibly going with. So I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like I said, it's just for a go-home show. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Could have been a clip show. Well, with all of that being said... Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around July 17th, 1995 for us?
Yes. A gentleman by the name of Chuck Popeye Richards passed away during this time. Have you guys ever heard of this guy?
No.
A wrestler from 1962 to 1974 for the WWF, which is probably why you've never heard of him. But the reason I bring it up is because Richards is the grandfather of current WWF star Skip, Chris Candido.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
He trained Chris when he was a teenager and managed him on indie shows a few years back. And another interesting fact about Chuck Richards is that he lost to Terry Funk in the early 70s in Terry Funk's Madison Square Garden debut. So... thought that was kind of relevant, being Chris Candido's grandfather, so we might not see Chris for a couple weeks here. There are plans to film another Double J music video in August.
Excellent.
And the rumored plan is for them to introduce a line dance called the Double J Strut. They are really going all in on that gimmick.
And I love it.
They are going all in. Savio Vega was injured on a house show, so that is unfortunate. Vega and Razor Ramon were having matches with Men on a Mission on house shows to prepare for their match at In Your House, but On this particular house show, it ended up being Bam Bam Bigelow and Adam Bomb versus Men on a Mission to take the place of Savio. So hopefully Savio will be healed up by In Your House.
Yeah.
And Bartlett, you mentioned this earlier, but it's in the Observer that they are doing an angle where WWF wrestlers are supposedly having things stolen from them in the dressing room, which apparently will wind up with Jean-Pierre Lafitte to get over his pirate gimmick.
Jesus Christ.
And that is all.
Just let him wrestle, goddammit.
Yeah. Now, you know what would be really funny is if he stole Kama's chain that was formerly the urn that Kama stole.
Yeah, just keep passing it around.
Yeah. A chain event.
Yes.
Maybe Jean-Pierre could melt it down and fashion it into an anchor for his pirate ship.
It is gold. He loves gold.
Yes, that is true. Just to kind of piggyback on your news there, Joe, after watching this episode and remember about midway through, they replayed the Double J video. I did a little research, unable to find the names of the background singers in the Double J video.
Stalking the background singers.
Yep.
Well, you know.
It's the Bartlett way.
Whoa, now, come on. That's a bit low.
Just ribbon.
Well, thank you, Joseph. It's illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We're done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can find us on every major social media and podcast subscription platform by searching up the handle Wrasslin Raw. That's WRASSLINRAW. While you're there, don't forget to click subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know about the fastest growing wrestling podcast in the world. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at In Your House 2 with matches featuring Aldo Montoya, the Allied Powers, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.